Let's Talk Small Business, the real talk, no BS podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to grow and actually enjoy the ride. I'm Mitchell Wilson. Let's get into it. Welcome. I would like to introduce Ross Hawkins, AI enthusiast, been a veteran in the tech industry for over 30 years, I believe, really focused on software development. So I know that you know a whole lot about the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is AI. And I guess its use for business and small business. We'll have our opinions. We will discuss probably real world things that we can do and what we need to watch out for. So Ross, let's talk business.
Let's
Welcome.
talk business. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
AI. How it's a buzzword, I guess, at the moment. How long have you been following AI as it's in today's consumer market, so to speak?
I think as a tech enthusiast, I've been following AI for many years, but many years ago it probably was more in the sense of memes and jokes and haha, it's going to take over the world. But over the last couple of years and really the last 6 months, the momentum has just taken off and the opportunities are really, it's becoming clear that this isn't just a toy. It's not just something that you can use to help you with your emails or create funny pictures or whatever you want to do with it, as it was maybe six months or more ago. It's starting to become a real serious tool for some real serious things and providing opportunities for automation and improving workflows and saving money. And that's all very exciting. And there's an obvious potential downside there that from a social perspective that we've got to be aware of as well. So it's been a very interesting time in the last 6 months or so. But for me, I've been tinkering with AI and ML and reading and learning about these things. Maybe a while ago it was more from an interest perspective, but they've sort of been something that's been in the back of people's minds who have been in tech and software for a long time. And now it's really exciting starting to see some of these things come to fruition and actually be achievable.
You mentioned about memes. Let's just get it out of the way. Is
Sure.
there going to be a Terminator 2 Judgment Day? Is AI going to take over, or that's not really what we need to worry about?
I think we need to think about it, and I think it is being thought about at the level it should be in terms of the people creating the models, the actual model developers themselves. The history that's baked into this industry from the start has been quite revolutionary, but interesting to start with safety baked into the product development cycle. And if you look at automobiles and cars a long time ago, it took a long time before safety, including safety features in cars, became economically viable because people realized that making cars safer was actually a purchasing positive. And it was added on later is kind of the point I'm trying to make. But with AI, there's a real focus on safety and what could go wrong as part of the process. The thing that I think, though, is that humans have a really good track record of unintended consequences and not quite seeing all the angles and all the flow-on effects. And that's some of the stuff that I'm quite interested in terms of how that plays out. I think a lot of people are predicting a lot of doom type scenarios, and that's something that's baked into AI as well. The probability of doom, the P doom rating as they call it, which is a terrifying thing to have baked into any industry, that the industry itself has got this probability of a doom type scenario built into it. But I guess welcome to the modern world. But yeah, I think safety is something that they're thinking of quite a lot, but who knows where this is going to go. I found myself the other night, I was working with Claude Code, and Claude Code is the agent type thing where you say, go off and build this whole thing, and it runs off and has a crack at it or does whatever it does. And as part of that process, Claude Code's quite neat in that it shows you its thinking and tells you what it's doing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it gets to a point where it was creating files and it's asking my permission. Can I create this file? And I'm like, yes, you have permission to do whatever you want. Go hard, my friend. You are doing wonderful work. Yes, except do not ask again. And I think, is this how it starts? Because I'm giving it all of this access based on seeing positive results, and at this point in time it's working and it's working for me. But it had a real vibe of this could be how these things get started in terms of have access, do this. And I think that's something we're seeing more and more, I guess, as it becomes part of automation and workflow improvements that people are making in their everyday lives, like having it built in, agents built in to check your email, summarize your email, forward these things to a Slack message, take it one step further, make decisions about improving or denying someone's insurance claim, or is this person whatever. That's some of those automated decision makings have been in place. Automated decision making processes and tools have been in place for a long time. Largely in the past, that might have been something like machine learning based on historical data, or it might be like a rules engine or something that says if this person has been a lifelong smoker and they're applying for lung cancer, then maybe you want to add additional flags, etc., etc. And that's been prevalent in a number of industries and systems for a while, but AI takes it to a whole new level. And as the power is really showing that people can automate more, they're putting it in more and more processes. And by and large, it seems to be positive, but you can see how it could go wrong, and also you can see how exceptions in flow or different scenarios that need someone to go, oh, actually, we need to think about this, can be lost in the weeds. And I think the more embedded it becomes in our society, the more of these implications, unknown implications, the potential for them really starts to balloon out. So this is a long way of not answering your question. But
yeah, like I'm just thinking in my head, like, because it's really popped up. I know people that are like, no, I don't want to use that. It didn't work, or it's painful, or whatever.
Yep.
I know there's, I guess you mentioned there's a couple of sides, pros and cons. So as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I think it's amazing in terms of, I think of it as a tool, just like the internet came along and that was a tool. This is something that can really speed up the output. It can really enhance how much work we can get done, which on the downside, I guess, let's look at, for a smaller business, it means we can get up and running a lot quicker. However, for a larger business, I can see how it does take a lot of people's jobs.
Yes.
In terms of the coding. And I did have a giggle because I saw online there was a big poster up line, and it basically just said, hey, look, what did it say? Hey, AI, or hey, ChatGPT, paint my house. And it was really saying, hey, look, maybe you're best to go learn be a plumber or something. The AI can't, at this stage, sort of take away your job. But, do you see it as how do you see it? Do you see it as a tool? Do you see it as I don't know. Well,
I think at the moment I am looking at it as a tool, but I'm also looking at it as a tool that's evolving very, very quickly. And I think, I guess it's probably an appropriate time to mention the general AI goal that the AI developers are headed towards, and that's kind of when we reach GAI, as they call it, then things will change, and that's essentially
GAI.
So GAI is where the model developers are trying to get to in terms of a place where the models themselves are capable of doing pretty much everything that a human being can do. Now the trick with GAI is, and GAI is years away, and some people say 5 years, some people say 10 years, and it's interesting that the definition of GAI is actually something that's not fully, there's no one definition of it. Multiple people have different definitions, and between OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, Google and Gemini, so on and so on, DeepMind, that a lot of them have slightly different definitions of what it means, which is kind of interesting. But the point is it's almost, I guess, where it achieves not sentience, but the point where it's more useful than saying, okay, ChatGPT, can you write me an email, because ChatGPT will already know about your email, it'll already seen it, and it already knows that came from Bob, and that Mary needs to see that too, and that's related to the project that you're working on, because it's got access to the project, and it can see the project, and it knows the tasks, and it knows that emails regarding this task, and it knows, this sort of thing. It's in all aspects of your life. And there's one of the things that the jokes around Apple is that Siri should be your AI champion, and Siri is maybe not providing the level of functionality that everyone needs. But, if you imagine if you had a Siri that was accurate enough, that had access to essentially something on your phone, probably has access to most of your life, the benefits it can give you. So as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to paste you an email into a little chat text box, and I'm going to say, improve this or help me write this. It can see your inbox. It knows your writing style. It can see the last 10 years of your email history from your Outlook or your Gmail or whatever you're using, and so on and so on. And it can actually provide some analysis, and it's got context on the contacts that are emailing you, and it just knows so much more and can do so much more with maybe potentially more consequences, and so on and so on. So where we are at the moment, a lot of these AI offerings really do feel like tools to me, and I think treating them like tools is the way to go for now. But I think it's important to know that the industry as a whole is headed towards this part where this path where we have much more available, and that we have general AI and AI doing a lot more than it's doing now.
Well, have you got any thoughts on or understand the adoption of the use of AI? Because, of course, I guess in my lifetime, internet came along and it built up and built up and built up. And then I guess the next one I can kind of think of in this tech world is your smartphones. So, once smartphones came in, now everyone's has a smartphone. From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because so many people have, for instance, smartphones and computers now compared to where it was, is the adoption faster and quicker with AI? Because before, like getting the internet, it took quite a long time, but now it's sitting in our pocket. Does that mean the adoption is a lot faster? I'm not sure. What's your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I mean, the dilution rate of this technology, I think, is going to be different to mobile phones and internet usage, and those are two really good examples, because and they're ones that are used in comparison in terms of technologies that have been adopted and the effects that they've had, and the internet and mobile devices are definitely a really big part of that, and for each of those, not trends, but technologies being adopted, you can see very specific changes that started to creep in. You think about when using Google for your exams was frowned upon, and so on and so on. I think with AI, it's similar but different. I think the dilution rate and dilution just in terms of a different sort of way of looking at adoption rate. The way this is going to permeate our society is already looking a little different, and it's almost like there's a digital haves and have-nots in terms of having access to AI tools and technologies in your workplace. And by that, there are some workplaces out there where AI use is banned, and in some cases they'll probably have good reasons for that, but some of it just may be fear. I mean, I know, talking about the difference between large and small organizations, policing this from a policy perspective can be very difficult. And so a lot of companies it's in the too hard basket for now. So the point being there, you've got some wonderful people, wonderful engineers who simply aren't using this technology because, well, they're not allowed to, and maybe they don't have time when they go home to tinker because they've got more of a life than someone on this call. But so the thing is that whether you've got an excuse to use it or not, now I think really is guiding the way that dilution will happen from a workforce perspective. From a tools and technology perspective, it's anyone who's using a wide range of software packages will probably have worked out that they're trying to cram AI into every nook and cranny, and I think some of those implementations are obviously marketing related. So, hey, we've got AI, yay! But some of them are offering some very real benefits. But yeah, I think that it's speeding up so much in the last 6 months. But I think it's still interesting the number of people and organizations who've got no exposure and who are thinking, you said before, tried it, didn't get good results, binned it, moved on. And that's the difference between people who tried it and went, okay, I'll try it again in a week, or I'll try it with this different problem. I'll try it to something that's not related to work, or I'll try it related and go, oh. And one of the things that I kind of feel is that everyone individually has to find their own aha, gotcha type use case where you go, oh, I get it. And for me, mine wasn't necessarily code related. It was actually home improvement and related, getting it to summarize information and going, look, I don't need to know a 10-year history of dishwasher servicing and maintenance to just help. But you can help me find where the filter is on my mealer so I can rip it out and clear the gunk or whatever without me breaking it. Because it's a thing like, is this supposed to screw? No, you're supposed to pull. Okay, I work that stuff out afterward. I go, okay, no, that wasn't supposed to screw. It's a silly example, but it can really be quite helpful. Video. Yes, yeah. And so
scroll all the way through it.
Yeah. I'm actually doing some work with one of my neighbours up the road on some CAN bus EV solar work, so pulling batteries out of wrecked BYD cars because they're really impressive batteries and using them in home solar systems. And my neighbour sent me a video. He's really big on sending videos, but the whole point is he sends these 25-minute long videos, and there's one snippet in there that I need. So I'm just sending that video to whatever, ChatGPT in a couple of cases, but Claude as well, and saying, summarize this video, specifically look for parts where they talk about CAN bus errors and CAN bus communication, spit me out a summary, give me some timestamps. I don't want to watch a 25-minute video. I don't got time for that. And just to be able to say, watch it for me, give me a summary. I'm finding it really useful for summarizing data, summarizing either documents or videos and that, because it has less opportunity for hallucination and to make things up. If you're saying, summarize this is a thing, as opposed to, hey, tell me how I can do this, and it might look at a few sources and go, and maybe there's more opportunity for it to hallucinate and guess there. But with summarization, it's really, is that a word? Summarization? With summarizing data, documents, or whatever, it's super powerful. And just an interesting story on that. This is like I think this is about a year old. It might be less. It might be more recent than that. It town in the United States, there was I can't remember the actual position. I think it might have been mayor or some point on the local government. I think it was mayor. His whole campaign he was running on, I'm going to use 100% AI to do my job. And his point was, look at the amount of documentation that we have to read for every meeting. We get sent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 20-page documents. He said, no one reads these things. So imagine being able to go into a meeting with even the cliff notes for all of these documents, like bang, 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 the salient points summarized. Like that's, and his point was not the AI was going to make the decisions automatically, but the AI was going to analyze all of the documents for each meeting, make some recommendations, and then essentially they would go in there and vote and say, are we going to follow this up or not? Now, he didn't win, but I thought the whole premise was quite interesting. And I think that the insight it gave you into, look, you've got the situation at the moment where local government is supposed to read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages for these meetings, and it's too hard and they don't do it. So anything that you can do, like there's room for opportunity there, I guess is the point. And there are situations like that in all sorts of businesses, small businesses, large businesses.
So let's talk real use cases. So off the top of my head, these are things that I use AI for. I guess, like on this podcast that we're doing right now, at the end of it, it'll create some shorter clips. So rather than me having to, or the editors having to sit down and watch the whole thing and cut out these shorts, that I guess saves a whole lot of time. Look, I use ChatGPT a lot for anything written. So emails. It's really, I find it as a really good base when I'm creating something. So if there is a document, it's like, okay, start me off with this, and then I can talk to it to re-edit that. When I'm in meetings, like on Zoom chats, for instance, I would use it for summarizing those meetings. I haven't, but I really want to in a real life face-to-face meeting, use my phone to just record it and summarize that meeting. I'm on a couple of boards, and I think, hey, we should actually try this alongside the secretary that sits there and writing the whole notes as well.
Maybe don't tell the secretary.
No, she doesn't want to be out for a job, but it's I'd love to do it alongside that to test and see how it goes. What else have I used AI for? I mean, personally, I think as a birthday present once, I created a song for someone, because what do you give someone who's got everything? I don't know. So that was the idea. Haven't quite got into the video side of things, but I do believe for myself there'd be really good use cases in advertising. for instance, for smaller clips. What else that's kind of what I kind of probably understand on a day-to-day basis. What any other sort of ideas that you would be using or suggest for small businesses to give a go?
One of the big things that is helping small business and large business as well, but small business, there's some very quicker wins due to agility, time to move, etc., etc. But and it's kind of boring, but it's automation and it's workflows, and it's looking at, okay, here's a process that we use this process to sell widgets or field customer inquiries, whatever it is, and just looking at ways that you can take steps out of it, improve steps, and automate things. Those are where some real wins are happening. And I think that in the past, a lot of that has been consultants, internal consultants, external consultants doing that work for companies, but there are more and more tools starting to emerge. There's recently been a New Zealand company has released a product called AutoHive, and that's available at autohive.com. The people who are building that Wellington-based company, Raygun, they started off doing error logging for software development tools. So you plug Raygun's tools in and it catches all the errors. And they've shifted on to AutoHive. And AutoHive looks to simplify this process for non-developers in terms of allowing you to build AI agents, and it's probably a term we should come back to briefly, but with this whole main purpose of automating workflows, speeding things up, letting you do this yourself. And what we're seeing more and more now is that I mentioned Gmail and Outlook and so on, but what we're seeing now is a lot of other tools are offering either integration points or options to access the data from another tool, so an AI agent, as part of their offerings instead of adding AI into theirs. So, for example, Atlassian
Trello?
provide horrible
Yep.
enterprise. Trello. I'm not sure if Trello offers one, but it might. But Atlassian Confluence is enterprise documentation product, and now you can basically point your AI at that. So you can say, look, I'm writing a document, refer to these schedules, refer to this product definition and specification. I want to do this.
I do know that company because they sponsor the Formula One, which I follow. Yeah.
Yes, they do. And that's really great that they sponsor Formula One. I'm a big Formula One fan. Just when you actually go to use their products, life gets a little bit difficult. Jira is a bug tracking system, which is notorious for being a bloated enterprise piece of garbage to use. So it's that's why Atlassian makes me
Trello
cringe.
though.
But they are Australian,
it's nice
so
and simple. Okay, so I'll name a few of these out there, but then we'll come back to that word AI agent. So off the top of my head, in terms of what most people would have heard of ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, Gipity, yeah, okay.
Or ChatGPT.
We've also got Gemini with Google. There is Perplexity was a big one. Claude that you mentioned as well. Microsoft have their own, I'm guessing, Copilot, but Copilot's backed by OpenAI. So you start to get interesting things where you get the difference between the model developers, the model itself, and the tool used to access it. So, for example, ChatGPT is a wrapper that sits on top of OpenAI's models. So ChatGPT, in this instance, is bad. Yeah. In this instance, the example doesn't work so well because both parts of it are created by OpenAI, but it gets very interesting, especially when talking about dilution rates of the technology, because you have the model developers who are building these models, but then you have developers on top of them who can build weird and wonderful things. So it actually also comes back to some of what you were talking about before in terms of risks and potential dangers, is that the ethics of the model developers may be different to the ethics of the tool or the implementers. So, say for example, you build a tool, an AI model that's designed for videos, and you're thinking of wonderful ways to improve efficiency, and then someone comes along, whacks something on the front of it that fine tunes it to make porn. Well, that's not what you intended, but that's what they're doing with the technology, and obviously ignoring terms of service and so on and so on. The whole point being that you've got different parties in terms of the model developer and the actual implementer.
and that becomes kind of important with looking at things like ChatGPT, understanding that ChatGPT is really just a chat interface to allow you to talk to the model. And when you start using things like Claude Code, for example, you use different approaches to communicate with it. But also when you're using something from another vendor, or using something from Atlassian, or using something where they've implemented AI, they'll probably be using someone else's model to achieve that, which is where a lot of the hard work's done, and where a lot of the safety effort is. And then when it comes to a developer and implementer, they've got their own.
Now, these models that you're talking about, likes of ChatGPT, that's just the biggest name that I can think of. Pro tip, I talk to it rather than type, because I'm faster talker than typer. But they also,
I started trying that too.
Just so people know, they also like put out images. Some of them put out video as well. I know you've looked at
yes.
Google has their video, and that's sort of everything's getting better and better.
Yes.
But coming back to this term before we lose it, the AI agent. Now that's a buzz term that a word that I've heard. Do I understand it? Maybe. I'll let you explain exactly what an AI agent is, as opposed to just regular AI chat.
Sure. So when you're typing in ChatGPT, pasting in ChatGPT, whatever, you are, that's sort of a chat type interface. You're giving it a task. It's going off and giving you back some output based on your input, and so on and so on. Agentic AI is really empowering these AI services to do more, and to do more themselves, and for it not to be needed to be triggered by you. It could be triggered by an event, i.e. when I get a new email, so it's always looking at your inbox. When I get a new email, summarize it if it's from one of these three key people that I'm waiting for, create an item in Trello and whatever. It's more things running in the background, automation, things running on your behalf, and less need for this sort of, not challenge response, but input, output, and I need to do something. You set it up and it runs off in the background and does its thing.
And what situations would that be?
Agentic AI is...
I guess you used emails, one of them. I guess if you get an email and you just need a helpline, that could be automatically emailing them. Is that the example? Yeah.
Yep. So that sort of thing. But it could be more like you have a customer service inbox, and that inbox is responded to by humans or something. You might want it to have inquiries or requests of a certain type flagged and sent to management, i.e. if a certain number of curse words exist or something like that, or maybe you need to file those or create something somewhere for them. The email is kind of the most obvious, but also the most boring example. From a code perspective, you could have an agent running on your build server. So when your developers check code into a repository and you run your automated tests, you could also get some additional investigation and inspection done on that code, either the entire code base or just on that commit, to say, did this introduce any vulnerabilities? Is this what we expected? Do we see anything wrong with this code? Does it conform to standards based on the rest of the code base, because I can see the entire code base, etc., etc. And that's one of the differences of agentic AI and why we use agentic AI a lot. So code, for example, if I'm working on a piece of code, I could work on a piece of code in Claude or ChatGPT, and I could paste some JavaScript or CSS or anything in there and say, look, this isn't working. Can you help me look at this? But it only sees what I paste. Whereas Claude Code, I say, hey, here's the whole repository, buddy. Go hard. Have a look at this entire thing. And I can guide it, and I can say, look, we're working on this one page, we're working on this one area, we're trying to fix these bugs here and this thing, but it can see everything it needs. So if it needs to say, oh, I think this bug's actually caused by something over here, it can see everything. It knows, it can look at it.
So I've heard the buzzword vibe coding, as in, from what I understand, you can basically just talk a website into existence now by going to some of these sites, and rather than typing, we can say, hey, start building me a website that does this and this. There are services out there like that, aren't there?
Yep, absolutely. No, absolutely. The vibe coding results have been really interesting. And I personally, I'm looking forward to the flow-on business, the vibe security, where we get to fix all the vibe coding issues, because there's some really interesting pitfalls that you can make with vibe coding. And I think with vibe coding, it's really, or a vibe coding type approach. I mean, the whole thing is that it can give you code and the code can run, but if you don't have the context to understand, is this the right approach? Will this approach scale? Is this approach secure? Like for example, say you're vibe coding something and it decides to spin up a username and password management system for you, and it decides to roll its own approach to security there. Well, you wouldn't do that because there's components out there to do that, and that is an area that absolutely needs to be secure. It needs to be checked. Your implementation needs to be right. You wouldn't really want to get AI to do that unless you really had the ability yourself to look at it and go, yep, that's the output I expected. But for things like prototyping, where you're trying to get an idea of, look, it doesn't need to be the best code. I want to spit this out to see if my idea is viable. I want to spit this out so I can go, yeah, this does save me time if I do this, knowing that the code underneath it isn't of good quality, but you can take that to the next level.
So a tool for experts, it's still like, it's just how the experts go about it. You still need those experts in there. Yes, you can probably figure it out yourself for initial minimum viable product testing for an entrepreneur kind of thing. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, look, I think the thing is that context is key. And with using this, I've used it in a number of development projects over the last 6 months where a number of times I've been surprised how much value I've got out of the answers that it's given me that I've hated. It's come back and said, you can do it this way. And I look at it and I go, I could, or I could not. And again, having that conversation of going, okay, let's try a different approach. And then you kind of go, okay, I've seen a few different ways to do it. I haven't had to build those out myself. And that really has helped me make a decision. But on which way to go. And sometimes that's been a mix of some of the solutions. Sometimes that's been the way that I wanted to do in the first place, and I was checking alternatives, that sort of thing. And every time I go through that process, I'm very mindful of the fact that if you're a vibe coder or a junior developer using this tool, you'll be able to do exactly what I'm doing, but you won't have, you may not have the context to look at it and go, yeah, no, that is the right way to do this, or more to the point, no, that's not a good way to do this. And once you've built something, if you're building something large and you've got a number of compromises like that in your code, that's how technical debt is born, and basically it will become problematic. But if you're using this and you have some context, it can really save you some time if you have the ability to even just, vibe scan the vibe code to go, yeah, that looks right. That looks like what I'm expecting. Again, if you've been doing this for a while, there's certain things that jump out at you, certain patterns, certain just, words that it might come back to you with along with the code and say, this is why I've done this. You might have a reaction to that. That's the sort of context that is missing for someone who's never... who hasn't had a lot of experience in developing software. And not to segue too heavily here, but I think that's relevant to the conversations that are going to start becoming more prevalent about AI in education, or the role of education in a world where AI is prevalent. And we're going to have the similar conversations to, hey, why learn to handwrite? And of course, the obvious thing of, oh, you won't always have a device.
Like I was never going to have a calculator.
You won't be able to carry an abacus around with you. Yeah. And I was having this conversation with my son the other day, and he's going through a phase of hating maths. I mean, he's 8 for context. And we were sort of making jokes about calculators and jokes about AI. And it's going to be really hard to explain to people, be they children or not, like, why do you have to learn to do this stuff when we don't have to do this stuff anymore, or there's something that can do it better? But you really do need some sort of grounding context for how to achieve the tasks that you're asking an AI to achieve. I mean, this isn't true in all cases, but I think in a lot of cases it is. And if you think about maths, you've got the calculator there, but if you don't know the overall logic behind something like working out the GST percentage on something, or that sort of thing, you don't go, oh, how do I do that? Because you can't say to a calculator, tell me GST for this. I mean, you can with AI, funnily enough, but with a calculator you can't. So with a calculator, you needed that ability to break down the problem and so you can ask the calculator to do the work. I think the fact that with AI, it's not quite, that example breaks down with AI is quite interesting, but because you could say to an AI, hey,
how do we know whether it's even close?
But
we need to check that out.
Well, you could actually ask it to show it's working and give you something that you could verify on a calculator to check the results, so that would be okay. But the thing more is about having the knowledge and the ability to phrase that question well. And so when you've got a more complex example than trying to work out 15% GST on a purchase, maybe can't think of a complex example, but something that
Engineering,
requires
maybe.
multiple
Yeah.
steps, or you to break something down. Yeah, something with a multi-step algebraic type approach, and that's very common in programming, without some sort of mathematical grounding to work out how to ask your question and how to get some level of context for the answer, even if it's not full understanding. Education is going to play a part there. So where the lines are and the boundaries are going to be very interesting, but you just see the discussions around the attempt to police use of AI in essays, and you can see the arms race is starting, and are we going to be focusing on the quality of education for our kids, or are we going to be focusing on how to police kids from not using ChatGPT? And if we're going to be doing that, I think we should start that with a conversation framing it as into, hey, yes, there are tools that can write this essay for you.
Now,
here's why I'm making you do
I'll
it.
really admit, writing is not my strong point. Okay, and so I guess my oh shit moment was when I saw this could write what I was thinking and trying to get out.
Yeah.
When I've got the base there, I can edit it to how I want. But just that initial go, that was real tough for me.
Yeah.
I probably admit I would have been one of those students that would have AI'd my essay. Completely understand it, but the writing wasn't my strong point. So for me, that AI was like, oh my gosh, for me it was life changing. I want to know for you, what was your biggest oh shit moment when you first used AI a couple of years ago?
I think my oh shit moments have been more recent than that. I think a lot of the time using it. See, I think ChatGPT to start with was actually pretty good at writing from the get-go. And I'm trying to think back to where the first instances of people getting caught using it for essays were, but it seems to be a couple of years, that the writing side of things has been really good. Now, I actually really like writing, and I've always been a writer, and apparently I should have been a writer. I should have been a writer or in marketing, according to various professionals. And but I write. I used to write a lot, not so much anymore, but I used to write a lot, and I still find it useful for giving when I've got writer's block or for prompts. But for me, the writing thing was, hey, it's cool. This can save me time, but it's not a problem I have. I mean, I type 125 words a minute. I always have since my childhood, and writing has always been something that you can tell by how much I talk that I get on a flow, and so on and so on. And unfortunately, that's the same in writing. So that was never an issue for me. I saw the potential and I saw the use, but for me, it wasn't solving a problem that I really had. And I think that's what we come back to with what I was saying before about your own aha moment, and as applies to, I think, finding business applications for this sort of technology as well, is it's your aha moment, and it needs to be in your world and fit your situation. In software development, we have a term called dog fooding, which is essentially building something to fix a problem that you have, and hopefully other people will have the same problem. You go sell it to them. And so this is very much the same thing. You have to find your own use case. And I think a lot of people are seeing some of the stuff in the media, or hearing what their friends are doing with it and trying to do the same stuff, and they're not getting the same traction because maybe their problems aren't the same. Mine was code. The first time it spat out some code that actually ran first time, and me specifically, I work in all areas of the code. I'm a full stack developer, if you like to throw keywords like that around, but I hate the front end. I hate HTML, I hate CSS, I vaguely dislike JavaScript in some flavors, but I'm more of a back-end guy in software development terminology. So for me, the first time it fixed a CSS problem for me, a really obscure one that I was battling with. Here, this is my problem. Spat me something out, copy paste work. Oh, wow. And the more it started doing that, and I was using it more and more on very small, isolated issues, like a good skeptic would, in the chat type interface, so I can verify manually applying the changes and fixing it. But just the first few that were on a roll, that was probably the first half of my aha moment. And then the other half of my aha moments were the conversations I had where, as I said before, talking with AI showed me all of the great ways to not do this thing. and to be able to go through, and I think I can't remember the exact, I had a specific use case where I was trying to do something, and I knew there are a couple of ways you could approach it, and some are going to be better than others, and to not have to actually flesh those out into code and to see all of the pros and cons laid out like that, to have like this hypothetical conversation with my coworker. I've been referring to Claude and ChatGPT as my co-worker, to flesh those out and not have to spend time, I mean, obviously a few minutes to type it, but to see the benefits of actually having eyes on what some of these solutions might look like in a really short space of time, and to make a decision. Okay, it's clear, I can see the pros and cons, I can see roughly what the code's going to look like, that's a better way to do it, I was right, these are all terrible ideas, cool, go and build that. It's really powerful. And also for me, I've for a long period of long period, it felt like a long period, probably for around 10, 12 years, I was managing a team of people. And I think that it's really interesting if you're someone who's managed people, or if you're someone who, in a software world, you're used to collating requirements or documentation or thinking about business processes, then this technology will work differently for you, because all of a sudden you've got the potential to have so many coworkers who you don't have to worry about their feelings, and I don't mean that, and you can be nasty to them, because I always say please and thank you to ChatGPT and Claude in case the uprising. I really want them to remember that I had nice manners when they destroy us, or at least maybe I'll get put in a nice matrix pod with the nice pink goo instead of like slightly warmer or something. I've lost my train of thought.
It's a deep hole that we can go into. So, look, when this comes into overall, okay, bringing this, I guess, back to business, back to small business, this AI, I believe, represents opportunity to maybe do businesses that you couldn't have previously, in terms of how fast we can get going, what you can do with less of a team. Like I said, I know there will be some people out there that are afraid, going, AI is going to take my job. I do get that as well, but I guess in my world, I'm just wanting to embrace it. And for those that I guess worry that it will take their job, it is, I guess, time to look at all these opportunities that it does represent. What side of the fence do you sit on? Are you more of the, hey, look, I'm embracing it, or is it like, oh, I don't want to get into this so much?
I'm both, I think. I'm very skeptical, and I have a bit of a background in information security, and as a software developer, I always had a bit of an interest in security, and so I can see things to be concerned about. I do think that some of the ethical, I can call them ethical, societal concerns, because there are ethical concerns as well, and in terms of the energy requirements needed to train the models, the power consumption's insane, and there's some terrible stories of some of the things that have been done in countries like Chile, where I think it might have been, I can't remember which big player it was, but basically they go into small countries, they put data centers in there, they suck up all the water and destroy all the resources, etc. And there's more ethical ways of doing it, but they're slower. And so again, you come back to the human desire to do everything as quickly as possible. I'm trying to be, I'm excited seeing the things that I'm seeing and getting the positive results and looking at potentials, but I am very mindful of the negatives here. And I think that's largely because it's all very good and well to say, people could lose their jobs, but I think the real societal implications of that are going to be more complex. And I think a lot of the utopian ideals of these AI developers are based on, look, if you're not having to spend 20 hours a week drudging through your inbox saying thanks and blah, 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 then you can go and explore wonderful creative endeavors. And I think that's really great if that's what ends up happening. And I think, we are in a situation now where you go back 100 years or so, some of the concepts like having state paid for healthcare and university as well. Again, go back a couple of 100 years and talk to a farmer, and a farmer would find the fact that you have how many thousands of people essentially in middle management jobs sitting on their asses all day typing. Like, they wouldn't see that as work. If you're not out there in the field, that's not work. But things have changed. And I think if society manages to flex in a way where, we can actually, I guess, equally distribute the benefits of these improvements throughout society, then that could be really wonderful. But I don't really think humanity has a good track record there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think, unfortunately, I'm really enjoying the positives and focusing on the technology at the moment, just because the world's a dumpster fire anyway. So I really don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with all of the negatives of AI quite yet. But I am very skeptical, not skeptical, I am very concerned about some of these negatives, and I am trying to be, I guess, like I said, skeptical just in terms of making sure that sticking to appropriate uses of this technology, and very mindful of the negatives. It's also very different when you're in a slightly older stage of life to a younger person. Like, no idea how I'd feel if I was 20 years younger and I'd just come out of university or something, and I'd spent a few years studying and then a couple of years doing an internship, and then I'm like, well, where am I going to go now? And I think that's real concern for a lot of the workforce. And I mean, if I was a younger person, I'd probably be very different to where I am now, where I've got the benefit of experience, and I've seen how wasteful a lot of things are, and how much room for improvement there is. But also, I'm not looking to, I don't know. I've been in this industry a while, and so I'm not. It's not like I'm starting out. I'm kind of at the let's burn it all down and start again type
just
phase.
Like the internet, we had to embrace this, and now we use it. It is out there in the world. It is speeding up, and in the end, for now, it takes people like you to look into this industry and make sure it heads in the right direction. We're thinking about those things. I guess for someone like me, I'm below all that. And so I would say to people right now, try and use it, embrace it, use it as a tool, and put our faith in people like yourself that there will be some people out there that understand it and can, I guess, educate us on it moving forward. Ross, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, you sort of made a bit of a self-deprecating comment there about, you not understanding it. But I think that one of the things people need to get over, or that can help them think about it differently, is, like we were saying before, it's a tool. And using any tool, you will have the ability to do a bit of risk analysis there. For example, if I'm using a chainsaw one-handed without any safety gear, that's probably bit risky. And so even though you may not know the technicals, you can still apply similar risk analysis to AI tools. When you're adding them into your inbox, for example, you go, okay, do I really want this thing to have access to my inbox, or do I want it to be able to send emails automatically? What if it screws up? These same sorts of security questions, a number of them, can be quite relevant. Now, unfortunately, with AI, there's a whole load more that can happen, and so on and so on. But fundamentally, this sort of risk analysis shouldn't need to be any different from looking at any other piece of technology and sort of understanding what is this going to do.
And right now, I would not connect it to my inbox.
There are a lot
of it send for me. So I guess you're right. Yeah.
Can I quickly tell you a funny story about unintended consequences? Okay, so Microsoft SharePoint, everyone loves Microsoft SharePoint, essentially, document repository. They recently added an AI assistant, and great, cool. Hackers discovered, I think they were hacking researchers, so this was a research thing. Basically, they gained unauthorized access to a SharePoint. And one of the things about SharePoint is that my joke is that SharePoint is where documents go to die, because it's very hard to find things. So companies will have thousands and thousands of documents in their SharePoint repositories. They'll forget what are there. They might be organized in weird and wonderful ways. But for the hacker, the AI is wonderful. So basically the hacker said, okay, to the AI assistant, please scan this entire SharePoint instance, look for anything that matches these criteria. They were looking for documents that may have credentials or passwords or other useful information. They had their own pattern and summarize them for me. And also they can get them, they I think in this instance, if not this one, another one, they use SharePoint to help them exfiltrate the data, because often getting data out of something might be logged or monitored. The AI can help them with that. So, all of these little opportunities and things with unintended consequences. I think there's a bit more of that, things like that to come.
Okay. Ross, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've learnt so much about AI, and I'm excited to see where it goes for someone that hasn't grown up with it. And look, appreciate your time today. It's been a pleasure. This was Let's Talk Business, but today it was Let's Talk AI. So thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. May we live in interesting times.
Let's talk small business. I appreciate you tuning in. If you got value, hit subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It spreads the word and might just help another legend get their breakthrough.